Hello, heroes and Zargons. I'm Alfred, and this is the Trials and Tribulations of Zargon, a series which details the many ways in which the Emperor's heroes foil Zargon and his minions in their plots to conquer the Empire. After the heroes humiliated Zargon in the original quest, it was time for something a little different. So I presented the heroes with a menu of threats facing the Empire. More on how I did this in a subsequent video. They elected to go to the Eyrie of the Stormlord. This was particularly exciting for me because the quest comes from the Wizards of Morcar quest pack, which I don't own and have never run. There are 5 quests contained in that pack, and I will be looking for ways to piecemeal them in as one-offs between quest packs. Part of the reason we're playing these out of sequence and piecemealing them in is that most of the wizards reside in towers, and towers imply multiple floors, but the dungeons themselves have only one floor. So, as the heroes attack the wizards, I'll be fleshing out their residences, and in doing so, I want to make use of all of the HeroQuest stuff I've collected over the years. So this video begins a 3-part series on the Eyrie of the Stormlord and designing MultiFloor Dungeons. Today, I'll lay out what I see as the design principles and challenges for a multi-board dungeon. In the next video, we'll walk through an outline of the revamped Eyrie of the Stormlord, and in the third video, Matt will talk about the experience of playing it and his observations about the boards. So, without further ado, the multi-board dungeon. The question, of course, is why, and the simple answer is because it's cool. Indeed, even official game designers obviously chafed at the single board design. I don't think I'm spoiling too much by saying that several official releases used a 2 quests in 1 design for some dungeons, and HeroQuest Advanced Quest Edition envisioned a 5-board configuration. The reason it is cool, apart from the fact that you get to fill an entire table with boards, furniture, dice, and minis, however, is that it opens up new options for taxing the heroes. New options for discovery, and new options for challenges. With regard to taxing the heroes, the longer the quest, the more heroes have to manage their resources. You can, and should, ask more of your hero players. For a multi-board dungeon to be effective, heroes should be interacting on multiple boards for at least part of the time. More on that in a moment. But making heroes work in different places at the same time requires new types of strategic thinking from the hero players. With regard to new options for discovery, quests of this length give Zargon the opportunity to present the heroes with more detailed exploration opportunities. More rooms means more things to find, more traps, and more monsters. But it also means more space to give definition to the dungeon. Melar's maze is barely a maze. It can't produce the winding, disorienting effect that a maze evokes, the way that a 3-board dungeon might. Moreover, dungeons that have vertical as well as horizontal movement provide new avenues for access and exploration. That first pit trap suddenly becomes very exciting because it probably drops you into a whole new section of the dungeon. Finally, there are new options for challenges. Multi-board configurations, especially vertical boards, can introduce challenges just as they introduce exploration opportunities, from above and below. They can also present the heroes with new puzzles to resolve, often by manipulating elements at different locations or on different boards. There are 2 types of multi-board dungeon. There's the sequential dungeon, something like Keller's Keep is thematically, where the heroes stick together and explore each section of the dungeon. This type of dungeon mostly challenges the heroes through resource management. Keller's Keep, as written, doesn't do this because heroes refresh their stats and can buy new items between floors. But when we do it in my campaign, heroes will regain neither spells nor body and mind points between floors. More on this in a later video. The other type is the contiguous multi-board dungeon, the one I've been talking about all along, where all the boards are laid out simultaneously and heroes can move back and forth between them. This is the kind of thing that really activates the potential of owning multiple sets of HeroQuest. HeroQuest Advanced Quest Edition occupies a middle ground between the 2 poles, taxing the hero's memory as they move between several boards that are emptied and then reset each time the heroes enter or exit the board. There are several challenges facing someone designing a multi-board contiguous dungeon. The first consideration in designing this type of dungeon is purpose, not merely what the narrative reason is for the multi-board dungeon, but what is the strategic conceit that will be used to make sure that multiple boards are relevant at some point in the dungeon. The primary way to make effective use of multiple boards is to split the party, since play in this game focuses almost exclusively around the party. More on how you can take the focus off the party in just a minute. One way to split the party is to use the Final Fantasy VI conceit and have the heroes enter as several small groups at different locations for some reason. This can open up JRPG-style puzzles where one group has to manipulate portions of the dungeon in order to advance another group. Another way to split the party is to give them a time-sensitive fetch quest. Imagine if the heroes had to rescue someone in a 2-board dungeon and were on a 20-turn timer. they would have to seriously consider splitting the party early on in the dungeon to cover more ground. A third way to accomplish the task of splitting the party is to point the party at multiple simultaneous objectives. Maybe part of the group needs to disarm a wall of force protecting a sorcerer's chamber and keep it from being reactivated, while another part of the group enters the chamber and deals with the sorcerer. These last two let the heroes make informed decisions about when and how to split the party, which is nice, but the first can provide some cool moments as well. 20 years ago, I designed a 5-board dungeon. I don't have the map any longer, sadly, where 8 heroes were tasked with entering a tomb through 4 entrances. And I still remember the elf using Pass-Through Rock to join a different party and keep them alive to complete their portion of the quest. However the party gets split, the divisions provide great opportunities for lesser-used spells like Swift Wind and Pass-Through Rock to shine, especially since in my world, Pass-Through Rock can take you up or down a floor. One final way to use multiple floors would be to have monsters or a rival party moving throughout the dungeon. This takes the focus off the heroes a little bit. I haven't tried this before, but it makes good use of the pathing options that a multi-floor dungeon opens up, as heroes and monsters can stalk each other across those multiple floors. The second challenge to creating a multi-floor dungeon is to figure out how and where the points of connection are. Board layout matters, since rotating boards or staggering them can yield unique and interesting configurations. Quest Builder, for all it does well, is not designed for laying out these configurations. I used to design in Paint so that I could A, put the boards on the same canvas, and B, highlight some of the ways in which they overlap more easily. For the area of the Stormlord, I simply laid the maps out directly on top of each other, which simplifies matters considerably. The core game and expansions give several tools for connecting boards. In the base game, there are pit traps, which can drop someone a floor, and there are the stairwells that usually take you in and out of a level. I rule that heroes can spend 1 movement die to climb into or out of a pit trap, making them a way to move between floors, though one could separate parties by dropping them through pit traps that are too deep to climb out of. Characters on the floor below defend an attack with 1 less die than the creatures on a floor above them, just as they would if they were in a pit trap. The quest packs also provide trap doors and holes. These can move people up and down between floors as well. Keller's Keep's stairs could be used as a gradual descent from one floor to the next. It's useful to have multiple points of connection between the floors for the same reason that it's useful to have multiple paths through dungeons, to give heroes options. The third challenge to a multi-board quest is figuring out how to keep the heroes alive, if that's something you're interested in doing. Depending on the design, every board is effectively another quest, and the heroes are designed to have enough resources for only 1 board. This is especially true of the wizard, whose 9 spells serve him much less effectively over several boards than 1. This is a great place to make use of the extra elf and barbarian minis from those quest packs, or of the new classes if you've got them. In fact, we introduced our rogue through our version of the area of the Stormlord. It's also helpful, however, to have places of respite and restoration in the quest. Somewhere that the wizard can get a partial recharge or the barbarian can restore lost body points and mind points. Luckily, we just got a new tile to do that with in the Rise of the Dread Moon. Beyond these core elements, I can't think of much to keep in mind about multi-floor dungeons that doesn't also apply to single-floor dungeons. If you want to see how these play out in my dungeons, like and subscribe to be reminded when the next video comes out. Then, if there are any other Zargons out there brewing multi-floor madness that consider other design elements in their dungeons, we should plot together in the comments below.